David, welcome back. I'm a bit confused about this report because for many weeks, like other business shows, we've been reporting on the rather downbeat EV sales that we've seen in many regions. This is hugely optimistic. What's the real picture?
Okay, that's a good point. So essentially all of those kind of rather pessimistic reports we've been discussing were looking at purely battery electric vehicles. This report looks at any sort of plug-in car. So it could be battery electric, could be a plug-in hybrid. And quite rightly, what they're saying is the future really is electric. So cars in the future will be either entirely powered by electrics or will be a mix of electric and internal combustion engine. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think they're much more positive because they see batteries becoming essentially commoditized items that are produced all over the world, and that really brings the costs down and therefore opens up the market globally. So partly it's definitional, and partly it's about being much more optimistic about battery costs.
In reality, you might say, of course, that infrastructure in many countries for electric charging remains terrible. Pricing is still not competitive, and global trade tensions, geopolitics, would all have to be resolved rather quickly to hit this target, wouldn't they?
Certainly all of those things really matter. The charging infrastructure is a real issue, even in places like Europe and the UK, where we're well ahead in terms of take-up of electric vehicles. Charging infrastructure isn't being built out quickly enough, so that is a huge issue. And there are these trade tensions which are, going to be major issues going forward. Just to give one illustration of that, big investment going into Mexico to make electric cars, partly to access then the US market. But if Trump gets re-elected, how is that going to work? So yes, there are some really big issues there. Equally, I think what the report is saying, costs are coming down, people are switching over, and that is likely to go beyond Europe, the US and China going forward.
Let's say this forecast is accurate, if indeed this report on fast growth of EV really does happen. Just talk us through the ramifications for the car industry and the energy sector come to that, and I'm thinking of both the electric industry and oil and diesel and petrol.
Well, the auto industry, for a start, is going to have to make a very rapid transition towards making electric cars, and different car companies are doing that at different speeds. Those that aren't able to do it, I think, will effectively disappear. We are going to see a fundamental pivot towards China as the dominant world automaker. That is well underway. I expect there to be substantial investment from China in making batteries and cars around the world, including in Europe. And for the energy companies, they will have to pivot away from fossil fuels towards providing energy in the form of electric. And that means much more investment, for example, not only in battery making, but also in the infrastructure, in the charging infrastructure to actually get electricity to cars on the move.
Demand is, though, largely concentrated in China and the United States and Europe, isn't it? I mean, just talk us through the rest of the world, and I'm thinking of the challenges that lie ahead in terms of poverty, because they still remain very expensive, but also the cultural obstacles, where in the United States, if you suggest to many American motorists they should give up their gas SUVs, well, they won't like it.
You're absolutely right. It's almost seen as a constitutional right, rather akin to having a gun in the United States, that they'll have their SUV. I think that the future there is likely to be in terms of hybrids, so plug-in hybrids, and then eventually electric SUVs. We're seeing Tesla starting to make some inroads there, but a very long way to go. In terms of other developing countries, we are seeing some take-up. So what was interesting in the report was Vietnam, 15% electric vehicles, Thailand, 10%. And I think what we're going to see really driving growth there are some of the really cheap Chinese cars coming to those markets, which will appeal to lower-income people getting into cars for the first time. But also, we've probably got to think more kind of widely about what mobility is like in those countries. You go to some of those countries, you'll see lots of three-wheelers. Electric three-wheelers are already taking off, and also two-wheelers. So more than just how we think about a car in the West, but electric mobility more generally, I think it's set to grow.
David, good to see you. Thanks for coming back on the programme. David Bailey, Professor of Business Economics at Birmingham Business School.